Good afternoon, everyone. We're down here at the Las Vegas Federal Courthouse. I'm down here with Staff Sergeant Mo. We've got some.
Oh, yours just cut out.
We've got some news here on the jurors, and I know Staff Sergeant Mo's live stream just went out here, but I guess we'll go ahead and continue. We will
low battery probably.
Try to work with go through all this that we just heard. I think this is good news, and what we have, and this is some of the same things that happened there in Oregon. We have one juror thinks some of the other jurors, a couple of them are biased here. So we're going to go over those. We do not know the number of that juror that wrote these notes. It could be multiple jurors on one note.
It was indicative that it was multiple,
yes,
because it started out with "we the juror," we the jurors, and that's about all they read to us. It was the beginning of each note so that they can get them numbered. They didn't even have the jurors had not signed them yet, so they had to go back and have them signed.
That only took about 5 minutes to get to that. Was quick.
Yeah.
So juror number 143 and 144. So
questions. Number 143 and number 144.
Only thing they would tell us pretty much, it was all vaguely given to us, but juror number 143 said the note started out on Thursday. That's pretty much, the rest of it was vaguely talked about.
She would not read the entire question
read it all.
Record.
Juror number 144 was stated, was "we the jurors," and that's all it was. It's pretty much said also. We did bring in 2 jurors, and I'll let Staff Sergeant Mo talk about these 2 jurors. Juror number 6
and juror number 9. Okay, so and with juror number 6, when she was brought out, we recognized them each, of course. It was questionable. What was argued before she was brought out some more evidence for us to understand the potential question from the original juror or jurors that had a question about the bias or inconsistency in information. Some information was discussed by juror number 6 that she had a gun at one time in her life pointed at her head. Now, in a moment of anger, losing her temper, she had stated, "You have never had a gun held to your head," to someone else on the jury or multiple jurors.
She said it 3
That's
times.
unknown. She said, no, the other juror about the job.
About her working, yes.
That was 3 times. Okay, so back to the one with the gun raised her head. She was the first one brought out, juror number 6, and she had stated, well, first the judge had asked if there had ever been a crime committed against her. She said no. Had a weapon ever been held to your head? Well, she thought about it. Yes, when I was a child. Was there a charge ever that was related to that event? No. Did anything ever occur out of that event? No, nothing had occurred out of it.
Are you afraid of guns?
Are you afraid of guns, the judge asked. No, and it would not affect my decision or my bias. Although, this was brought to the attention of the court because a juror or multiple jurors had determined that there was a bias here due to, I don't even know if you can call it deliberations, when you're inserting your bias out of anger, admittedly so. And she admitted, she went further on her own before leaving the stand. She stated all on her own without further questioning that I'm really sorry that I had spoken or misspoken. I had just lost my temper, were her exact words. She was dismissed, and then juror number 9 was brought out for questioning. That questioning was along the lines in regards to, and you could tell from the motions or the discussions between the defense attorneys and the prosecution, that question was in line or indicative to her employment. It was stated by this juror to other jurors, or one juror particularly, that she still worked within the, not the federal government court,
the state
court system, and on 3 occasions had stated that she currently does. Her wording, how it was repeated on the juror's question, is what was examined closely in court on record. The wording that juror that was bringing it to the court's attention, reporting to the court, was stating that that juror had brought up their employment as if they were still employed with the court administration.
And one thing that got brought up there is they said that she was an officer of the court.
Now, Now when she did get brought up and was asked about her current employment, she stated that she works for an insurance company currently, and that she had once worked for the court administration, and it hasn't been since 2000. That's when that job ended.
She did work for 18 and a half years as in bankruptcy court, as somewhat as an officer of the court or a secretary there of some sort.
Workman's compensation.
Right, and then
administrative.
Yes, workman's comp.
Okay, so now how we're still deliberating right now is because even though the defense had appropriately examined these questions and felt strongly that this was cause for a mistrial, again, the judge heard the prosecutor, Myrie, she even spoke for him at one point, and determined that this wasn't, in fact, a conflict of interest, none of it, and that the jurors were remaining consistent with their previously reported answers when they were being under jury selection, that they had remained consistent, that she didn't see any inconsistencies, and that she didn't actually formally declare that this wasn't a cause for mistrial. As a matter of fact, she seemed to skirt around it, so it was never brought up again, even though the defense had formally requested a mistrial. I never heard anybody formally declare this will not result in a mistrial. She just simply said they can continue to deliberate.
They can. One thing I think that the notes show, and that how the notes read, I think this is my personal opinion, this is the foreman of the jurors that is making this, because this is what happened in Portland. The foreman of the jurors there brought forth these concerns. With the way these notes are wrote, especially we the jurors, it took them literally less than 5 minutes to take the notes from the courtroom to the jurors and get them signed when the government, the prosecutors wanted them signed. And they was back very, very quickly. So they knew which juror had this issue and had not signed these notes. These notes were brought back signed immediately, because the judge says she was going to send it back to them, and if they wanted these notes considered, they had to sign them before she would do any more considering on these notes.
She did refer them back to, without rewording it or having the marshal reword it to them, just told him to refer them back to jury instruction number 40. And if they hadn't actually looked at it, then they wouldn't have recognized and realized that they needed more than one signature, especially when you say, we the jury, or we the jurors. But I think they said, we the jury, which is multiple jury members. So it's indicative that it's multiple jury members. But the amount of time that elapsed really only had enough for one signature. We don't know, though, for sure. We cannot see. It wasn't specified.
We do know the judge elaborated on that this juror or jurors that were signing this felt that there was bias on these other jurors. And the word biased was used by the judge, and she made note of that to the court, that this juror felt that the other jurors are biased and could not make a decision based upon what they knew.
And that this juror that presented the notes to the court, the questions to the court, that this juror was concerned about a conflict of interest and whether they were deliberating or not. As a matter of fact, this juror, in some part of the note, it was the question, it was brought up, a concern that one of the jurors, I believe number 9, wasn't deliberating, wasn't making any considerations as per juror instruction number 37? 37. 37, as juror instruction number 37 does state, and she did clarify in court, that it does state that you do need to deliberate, discuss. You have to be able to discuss. This juror was being accused of not making any discussion at all, wasn't deliberating. So what we're seeing, what we have seen right now just happen, is that the jury is working really hard through their biases, but possibly not deliberating.
And do you think that
judiciously?
Do you think that is particularly reflecting upon that juror who claimed to have the gun pointed at her? That's what I'm assuming. Now,
that was the most concerning.
And a point of interest here, what I thought was really interesting, is the judge referring to the gun being pointed at this little girl's head when she was a child does not rise to the level of assault.
Well, and she is much older now, and one of the big concerns about the weapon being held to her head She is well over my age, in her 50s maybe you would say, gray hair, long gray hair, and she's still holding on to it, and she was so impassionate she admits to losing her temper, yet the court isn't considering this a bias or troublesome or a problem when it comes to deliberating any further correctly, judiciously.
Yeah. Well, what we see here is we see the bias in this court.
Yes.
Judge Myrie definitely has been biased in this.
Prosecutor Myrie.
I'm sorry, but yeah, the prosecutor Myrie, he's definitely been biased. He does not want to lose these two jurors.
Neither did the judge.
But the defense wanted to replace them or have a mistrial.
Yes.
And you continually see in the bias here, and the judge always defending the prosecutor in every single one of these
incidents. She certainly
incidents.
made it clear she really wants to hold on. Now, I think that if I remember correctly, this juror, the one with the employment issues, it's been under question once before.
She has been.
And she is definitely wanting to keep this juror, as well as the one we discovered today, juror number 6. She is definitely wanting to hang on to these two jurors that have obviously showed clearly their bias amongst their peers. And it was also brought up, I have to add, one other thing was brought up, that these jurors had these discussions outside of deliberation. That was brought up in court, outside of, and you had a question, Jamie?
Well, is this the juror that had the
husband?
No, that's juror number 1 there.
Yeah.
So it's another juror that's involved. Yeah.
Yeah.
These are 2 new jurors.
But for the audience, the question I believe you were trying to word was whether this was originally a juror that we had in question in regards to having...
Right, the person, or the acquaintance that she had, or whatever.
That may have worked in the courts as well.
Well, she got a message from him that she was supposed to...
That's a different juror.
That was a different... Okay, the message, the text message, totally different juror.
One thing the defense attorney said in this, if this juror had answered the questions honestly on the juror questionnaire before they was ever picked, they would have excluded this juror for sure.
My final conclusion on this, it didn't result in a mistrial. Obviously, they are continuing to have them deliberate, even with these biases, even with these inconsistencies. But either way, it's stacked for a mistrial now, because you're sending 2 biased jurors back in there to deliberate with their biases, known biases now. I don't know how else we work around, at least, again, a partial
Both of them did not disclose this information. They did not disclose this information in the jury questions when they were being picked as a juror. The defense team noted this and said if they'd have known this, these 2 jurors would have been dismissed already, or more questions would have been asked.
And they didn't follow the jury instruction to not have these discussions outside, and that was not hit on by either the defense or the judge, that these discussions that took place outside of deliberations are completely improper and in violation to jury instruction. So that alone, I mean, the inconsistencies, the fact that they did not report these things earlier on, and now these things are coming out, and outside of deliberation, meaning they're talking about the trial outside of deliberation. That is a huge violation of the jury instruction, and it's on the part of the biased jurors.
Let me bring out an observation. Now that these 2 jurors, quote unquote, have been brought on the carpet. Okay, they've been brought on the carpet. Okay? Their spotlight is now on them. Are they going to back off for what their position was before because they were called on the carpet?
And do their job judiciously?
Yeah.
That's a good question. We won't know until, well...
No. It's a day, tomorrow, whenever this decision comes forth. Hopefully we got it clear enough out there to everybody what we observed in the courtroom today. We'll just be still doing watch down here, waiting for a verdict, and we'll let you know as soon as anything new comes up.
Yeah, but the time that we've spent already deliberating, we're on day number 3, and we seem to see that the jury is only coming up with questions of each other, or talking about each other's personal experiences, and talking about the case outside of deliberation. So we're seeing multiple violations of these particular jurors, and yet we shall continue as if...
Sounds like a runaway jury to me.
I want to bring Neil up here to finish off with our live stream here. He has a poem I think. Is it a poem?
Yes,
He
that's
wants
correct.
he wants to quote a poem here. Here's Neil Wampler, guys.
One of our most devoted supporters, Holly Joe, I won't say your last name, has composed this poem that I think expresses the sentiments of many of us who have been in this fight for so long. The poem is entitled
Can you speak
America, Where Are You?
Speak up.
The poem is entitled America, Where Are You? America, where are you? Is what I'd like to ask. Where is your heart, your labor to take upon this task? You sit in trepidation, your lives are full of fear, and still you do not take a stand. Your message here is clear. Just as long as someone else is standing for your rights, you feel no obligation to deny yourself and fight. You live your lives in comfort, your eyes turn to the wall, and you will never take that stand that just might save us all. We've become a nation who refuses to take part in what we know is coming when this nation falls apart. And when we all awaken to see the travesty of all our folks in bondage and all our rights aggrieved, do not call upon us to save you from despair, for we have tried our very best, and you were never there.
Thank you. Amen.
I think that's all we have for right now. We'll be continuing to keep you updated as soon as anything new happens. So it could happen at any moment. We don't know. So
Or we have a long deliberation ahead of us, so
Yes.
we can get past the non-judicial work and get into the evidence would be, appropriate right now for our jury to focus on.
right now, if this same thing happened in Portland, Oregon, what we'll see is this juror, if he continues or her continues to see bias in these other jurors, they will send out another note. And they will make sure that these jurors get removed if that's the case. That's what happened in Portland, Oregon.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing we can pray here is that the truth does come out and we get a over-the-table not guilty is what we're looking for down here.
Yeah.
So let's keep
Acquittal,
praying.
full acquittal.
Full acquittal.
Full acquittal.
All right, that's a wrap.
Thanks a lot. 6.
And juror number 9. Okay, so and with juror number 6, when she was brought out, we recognize them each, of course. It was questionable. What was argued before she was brought out some more evidence for us to understand the potential question from the original juror or jurors that had a question about the bias or inconsistency in information. Some information was discussed by juror number 6 that she had a gun at one time in her life pointed at her head. Now,
Good afternoon, everyone. We're down here at the Las Vegas Federal Courthouse. I'm down here with Staff Sergeant Mo. We've got some.
Oh, yours just cut out.
We've got some news here on the jurors, and I know Staff Sergeant Mo's live stream just went out here, but I guess we'll go ahead and continue. We will
Low battery, probably.
try to work with, go through all this that we just heard. I think this is good news, and that what we have, and this is some of the same things that happened there in Oregon. We have one juror that is 44. So
questions. Number 143 and number 144.
Only thing they would tell us pretty much, it was all vaguely given to us, but juror number 143 said the note started out on Thursday. That's pretty much, the rest of it was vaguely talked about.
She would not read the
would
entire
not read it,
question
read it
on
all.
the record.
Juror number 144 was stated, was we the jurors. And that's all it was, it's pretty much said also. We did bring in 2 jurors, and I'll let Staff Sergeant Mo talk about these 2 jurors. Juror number...
In a moment of anger, losing her temper, she had stated, "You have never had a gun held to your head," to someone else on the jury or multiple jurors.
She said it 3
That's
times.
unknown. She said, no, the other juror
Okay.
about the job,
About her working, yes.
that was 3 times. Okay, so back to the one with the gun raised her head. She was the first one brought out, juror number 6, and she had stated, well, first the judge had asked if there had ever been a crime committed against her. She said no. Had a weapon ever been held to your head? Well,
that is, think some of the other jurors, a couple of them are biased here. So we're going to go over those. We do not know the number of that juror that wrote these notes. It could be multiple jurors on one note.
it was indicative that it was multiple
Yes.
because it started out with "we the juror," We the jurors. And that's about all they read to us, is the beginning of each note so that they can get them numbered. They didn't even have the jurors had not signed them yet, so they had to go back and have them signed.
That only took about 5 minutes to get there. That was quick.
Yeah.
So juror number 143 and 1